Welcome back. So today we're diving into another explainer and we're tackling something that, let's be honest, kind of stresses a lot of people out, business writing. But we're going to look at this through a totally different lens. I want you to think of your next document not as just, a blank page, but as an actual construction site. We're using an architectural blueprint metaphor today to transform that dry, wandering writing into a highly structured, engaging masterpiece. By the end of this explainer, you're going to see exactly how to build your ideas from the ground up so they stand strong and deliver your message perfectly. Okay, let's quickly check out the blueprint for this structural masterclass. We're breaking it down into 5 distinct phases. First up, pouring the foundation. Then, blueprints for organization. Third, constructing strong paragraphs. Number 4 is building bridges with transitions. And finally, perfecting your style. Let's jump right in. Phase 1, pouring the foundation. Because every great structure has to start in the dirt, right? This is where we lay the solid groundwork for literally everything else we're going to communicate. So at the very base of all this is your thesis statement. It acts as the concrete foundation of your entire document. No matter what your project is, it absolutely needs to convey a central idea in a short, specific, declarative sentence. Think about it. If your audience has to go digging around just to figure out your goal, well, your foundation is already cracking. They're going to be way less likely to read it, let alone be influenced by it. State your point crystal clear right in the introduction, and you make sure your audience never has to guess what you're actually trying to say. Now, just like a concrete foundation needs steel reinforcements, your document has to be reinforced by answering the classic elements: who, what, when, where, why, and how. And you might be thinking, well, obviously. But honestly, it's wild how often miscommunication happens just because a writer assumes the reader already knows the background. Keeping these 5 W's and the H in mind makes reviewing your draft a breeze. If you realize you left one out, boom, you know exactly what reinforcements you need to add. And here's where it gets really interesting. We secure this foundation using the classic psychological rules of 3: ethos, logos, and pathos. Your ethos is all about your credibility, which you lock in by using solid sources. Your logos is the logic. It's what lets your readers actually connect all those who, what, and where elements we just talked about. If they can't follow your logic, the whole building collapses. And finally, pathos, your passion. If your document doesn't convey any enthusiasm, you really can't expect the reader to care either. Keep them trusting you, and they'll happily stay inside the house you've built. Moving right along to phase 2, blueprints for organization. This is where we transition from that basic foundation into actually framing and outlining our ideas. So once you've got your basic elements down, you need a central organizing principle. The source material actually lists 17 different principles, but obviously you don't want to use all 17 at once. That would be a mess. So we've distilled the most relevant ones for business into this quick menu. For example, if you're reporting on a massive ongoing project, you'd probably use a chronological blueprint to show how things evolved over time. Or you might use a problem and solution blueprint to explain how a new logistical plan fixes, say, slow shipping times. Picking one central framework just gives your whole message a really solid logical order. And once you've picked that principle, you use the classic outline to actually frame it out. It's a hierarchical framework that organizes your main ideas and your subordinate supporting ones. You state the thesis in the introduction, you build the walls with your body paragraphs and specific data, and then you put a roof on it with a strong conclusion. When you take the time to outline first, your logic is never going to collapse under its own weight. All right, phase 3, constructing strong paragraphs. We've framed the house, now we're moving on to the bricks and mortar, packaging our information super efficiently through paragraphs and sentences. I want you to think of every single paragraph as a mini essay. It should follow this really precise 3-step assembly line. You don't just want to throw sentences together randomly. You start with a topic sentence to define the subject, then body sentences that clearly support that specific topic, and finally, a conclusion sentence that wraps the thought up or bridges into the next idea. This kind of modular construction is exactly what keeps your reader's attention sharply focused. Now, take a look at the dramatic difference between a weak, vague brick and a really strong, specific one. On the left, we can facilitate solutions in pursuit of success by leveraging our core strengths. Yikes, right? It sounds super fancy, but it literally means nothing. The reader has no clue what you actually intend to do. But look at the right. By using our knowledge, we can achieve production targets for the coming quarter. It directly states the scope. Specificity is absolutely the mortar that holds business communication together. Speaking of weak bricks, bureaucratic language acts like this unnecessary distracting decoration. I mean, why write at the present time when you can literally just say now? Why say implement an investigation when investigate does the job perfectly? In standard business writing, you really want to drop those ritualistic, wordy phrases that just add length and ruin your clarity. Using standard English ensures your communication is highly efficient and ultimately cost-effective. Which brings us to phase 4, building bridges with transitions. With our bricks firmly in place, we absolutely need connections to lock the whole structure together. Think about this core metaphor straight from our source material. If you put up the columns for a house but didn't connect them, they'd just fall right over. Your main ideas are those columns. Without transitions to show how they connect and depend on each other, your beautifully constructed ideas would just crash down into a disorganized pile of thoughts. So, what do these connections look like? There are specific types of linguistic bridges we use to guide the reader safely from one thought to the next. If you need to restate a complex point, you use a clarification transition, like in other words. If you need to address a contrarian opinion, you'd use a concession transition, like although it is true that. These signal words act like signposts. They draw attention and focus the audience's mind exactly where your logic is heading. And finally, phase 5, perfecting your style. The structure is totally built, so now we get to the interior design phase, finalizing the tone and the voice of your writing. Just like you wouldn't wear a tuxedo or, ripped jeans to an upscale business dinner, you really have to match your writing's level of formality to your audience's expectations. Business writing isn't usually the place for unbridled self-expression. It calls for a clean, professional style. Write too casually to a formal audience, and you risk looking inexperienced. Write too formally to a casual audience, and you just come off as pompous. Adjusting your tone is exactly like picking the right outfit for the room you're walking into. Let's talk about jargon for a second. Think about highly specialized jargon, like specific sewing terminology, for instance. If you're talking to fellow tailors, that jargon acts as an incredibly useful shorthand. But if you're writing to a general banking client, using those insider terms is just going to completely alienate them. So, your interior design rule here is super simple. Only use jargon if you are 100% certain your audience already lives in that specific house. Before we look at our next crucial interior design rule, I want you to ask yourself a quick question. Think about how you prefer to process information when you're super busy at work, scanning a report or an email. Do you want it to feel passive, or do you want it to drive forward? This is exactly why the active voice wins almost every single time. Look at the example on the right. Mackenzie processes all sales orders daily. The subject is actually carrying out the action. It's shorter, it's precise, and it has energy. The passive voice on the left just feels sluggish. Now, passive voice isn't entirely bad. It's great if you need to be diplomatic and maybe de-emphasize who made a mistake, but generally, the active voice is what drives business communication forward with real precision. And our last style tip. Just like arranging furniture in a room to highlight the best view, you need to position your key takeaways intentionally. The middle of a sentence is actually the area with the least recall. So if you really want a statistic or a fact to stick in your reader's mind, place it at the very end of the sentence for maximum emphasis, or right at the beginning. Basically, don't hide your best furniture in the dark corners of your paragraphs. And that brings us to the end of this explainer. We want to challenge you to take this structural toolkit and apply it to your own work. From pouring a concrete thesis foundation to framing it up, laying strong paragraph bricks, bridging those ideas with transitions, and designing the interior with a really active professional style, you are fully equipped. The real question is, the next time you sit down at your keyboard, are you just going to start typing, or are you going to start building? Thanks for joining us, and keep learning.